And this is a nice transition into a great deep dive on Nikolaj Ehlers' season and where he's at right now. In that, when things began, Nikolaj Ehlers was on the top line and was on the top power play. Missed an extended period of time, came back, has seen a small amount of time in those roles. But as things have settled out over the course of the past number of weeks, not only hasn't been on the top power play or on the top line, but has seen his ice time diminish. We'll get to the big picture in a minute, but Ehlers in the power play, did that just not work? Were these square pegs, round holes, or it's still I have a hard time wrapping my head around a player that is so talented, has traditionally done so many good things when he has the puck on his stick and when he's on the ice, not being able to really fit in on an NHL power play with the man advantage.
Yeah, that's one that I struggle with as well. I mean, you can look at individuals and say, okay, Dubois has a better net front presence, Scheifele can shoot and pass really well, Connor's a sniper. You can kind of do that sort of thing. But if you look at the results that these guys get, Nick Ehlers, points per minute on the power play, and that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to make goals happen. You're trying to get points on the power play. He's a leader on the Jets, not just amongst the better players, but the actual leader in that sort of regard. Part of that is because he is a little bit less predictable in terms of shooting, passing, his movement, those sorts of things. An enormous part of it as well is you can count on him for that zone entry. And, against San Jose the other night, there was that buzz in the air again when Ehlers had the puck, whether it was 5-on-5 or on the power play, even though his unit only got the tail end of shifts, where he picks the puck up and that puck is getting across the blue line and Winnipeg's going to end up with possession. Whether that's him skating in himself, holding on to it, whether it's him skating in and then a drop pass to a winger at the line or a teammate at the line, or he'll skate, generate speed, and then the defender sort of, I want to say collapsed at him, but they move towards him and he takes up that space, and then he'll do a dump play where he rims it all the way around and a Jets player is ready to pick it up at the other side. You saw all three of those forms for successful entries against the Sharks. That's an enormous part of a power play, especially when you lose the initial face-off, you have to go back and get it. Well, what happens next? And, Mark Scheifele and Kyle Connor have had some success with entries on the top line and the top unit, but there are days where it looks like it's not going for them, and then Ehlers is whipping up the ice, especially against San Jose. He looks particularly sharp again on that. That's an enormous part of a power play as well. So all this talk about fit, I'm like, well, I don't really care how it feels. If the power play is scoring more with the guy on the ice, then he should be on the ice.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of fans that would agree with that. This piece, as I said, folks, I mean, it's a longer read. There's a number of components to it, but tell us what when you decided to do this, Murat, what was the impetus for having this as a topic, and what were some of the areas that you decided to really investigate as to where Ehlers is at, as well as where his team is?
Yeah, I mean, the honest truth is that sometimes I get frustrated by the Nikolaj Ehlers dialogue. And it's almost like Logan Stanley, where you can't say that he made a good play or a bad play without somebody who hates him or loves him as a hockey player chiming in and as like an absolutist take on it. And I think Ehlers is similar to that, where, you can't really write that he's playing well without somebody watch him sort of overpass on a play, or, make a play that's a little bit too cute, chiming in and saying, oh, he's a perimeter player, all that sort of stuff. You can't criticize a decision that he makes with the puck without maybe a more data-informed person sort of saying, well, hey, he drives play, look at these charts. And I just thought that it was maybe time to explore both sides of those things as thoroughly as I possibly could. Ehlers is clearly a player that brings out a lot of feelings in fans, media, analysts alike. And I just kind of wanted to explore, what is he actually doing well? Is there any sort of metric-based reason to suggest that this is a bad year for him? Has he struggled? At least, I mean, we can watch him with our eyes, and that's part of the piece as well. And we can talk about his explosiveness. We can talk about overpassing. We can do that. But does that show up in the results? Is he not creating as many chances as he usually does? What about in the defensive zone, where he certainly gets a lot of criticism? He gets taken off the ice late in games. And I wanted to explore those sorts of things with more of a balanced viewpoint, because I think that he's a player that our memories and our emotions completely skew how a lot of us think about him. You watch him overpass in one instance and something goes terribly wrong, and that emotion stays with you, and you think, oh my goodness, like what a waste of a play. And maybe it was a waste of a play. He must not be creating. But then you zoom out and he creates so much, which you can see in the results. Not just fancy stats analytics, but actual goals for the Winnipeg Jets most of the time. That's worth exploring as well. And I just tried to parse through the eyes, the analytics, and give some credence to both sides, to Bonus and his sort of arguments that he makes, to the data, and then some of the differences and nuances that maybe, might explain a little bit of why he's at where he's at right now.
Well, you know what? You mentioned the coach. So let's start there. Even after the game the other day, when Bonus was specifically asked about Ehlers' play, it almost came across as somewhat of a lukewarm endorsement, if that makes sense to you. What do you make of the way that he's being used right now? What we've heard from Rick Bonus on a player with so much talent that has had production in the past, that continues to produce, but has found himself more often than not sitting on the bench in crucial situations and has not managed to click, certainly to the liking of the head coach, enough to stay on that top line, which was where he was pegged right from the first day of training camp.
Yeah, well, I'll spend some time from sort of what I perceive to be Bonus's point of view. And I could be wrong. I'm not in his head. This is how I'm interpreting. Over the offseason, he had a problem to solve. He had a leadership situation. He had a hugely disappointing season. You look at how productive Ehlers was last season and every season since 2019-20, he's led the team in points per minute in all situations. And there was a really, I want to say, easy solution. More Ehlers, better for everybody. And if Scheifele is your go-to number one center, which he was, that was a conversation they had, then are you going to go back to Blake Wheeler, whose minutes need to come down based on his age, whose captaincy you just took away, who, if you give him to Scheifele right off the hop, you're essentially saying, hey, I do it the same way as everybody who came before me? No. Bonus identified that he needed to make a change. He made that change, and for 2 games, it was tremendously productive. And I think there were a lot of results there. The offense was there. The speed was there. The point production was there with Ehlers, Connor, and Scheifele. Pardon my tongue here. But, of course, Ehlers gets hurt. He steps away from the team. Bonus needs other answers, and he finds them and has success with them. Ehlers comes back, and certainly there's some patience that needs to happen. We've looked at the laundry list of players, Andrew Ladd, Andrew Kopp, others who have struggled as they return from sports hernia surgeries. So there's reasons to be patient. I think there's valid reasons to maybe be a little bit cautious about the minutes. So there's like one part of the perception, I think. There's also, when we talk about the numbers, in all of the years up until this one, all of the chances that Ehlers creates, and he creates way more than he gives up, that's largely turned into goals for. If you look at the 5-on-5 plus minus in real goals, Ehlers is generating like 60% of goals scored when he's on the ice. Winnipeg enjoys 60+% of goals when he's been on the ice for the last several years. So coaches have been able to look at, okay, he's a bit chaotic to watch. Sometimes he makes mistakes I don't like, but we tremendously outscore our opposition. And I think that those memories, the goals, the celebrations, all of that sticks in memory. Well, this season, it's exactly 50%. Winnipeg has enjoyed 17 goals with him on the ice at 5-on-5, 17 goals against. And I think when you're a coach and you watch an Ehlers giveaway turn immediately into a breakaway, like what happened with Kyler Yamamoto of the Oilers the other day, and it goes in, you're not thinking, oh, this guy creates 60% of the chances and probably will get 60% of the goals again. You're thinking, gosh, I wish he made a better play on that 2-on-1. And I have horribly negative emotions because we just got scored on in a must-win game. So I think that what's happening a little bit is, one, Ehlers can be coached like all other players. There are strengths and weaknesses in his game. There are puck management decisions you don't like, even if you acknowledge he creates more than he gives up. But also there's a puck luck element to this where he's not finishing as well as he traditionally does. And Winnipeg's goaltending has had really poor results with him on the ice. Those things will even out. But Bonus can look at his memories and say, well, hey, we're outscoring the other guys, because he's not. And I think that that's all compounding into, okay, chaotic player. We're not dominating in goals, even if we get the chances when he's on the ice. We've got to figure something else out around this player. And I think that the goals will come because I think he has had a mostly good season, even if there's some coachable moments in it.
You know, I'm, and I think you nailed that there. I mean, I think there is real-time reactions of people, and this goes with fans, but I think it also goes with coaches. When, you know, one sort of individual play amongst many stands out and it really does negatively impact you on the scoreboard, I think the reactions to that can be magnified in big ways, and I think that is the case of so far what we've seen from Ehlers at times since he's come back. Part of what you talk about as well is the eye test, and I'm a huge Ehlers fan, always have been. I will admit at times I've been a little underwhelmed on what he and his line mates have been doing at times, especially at 5-on-5. But again, maybe we're just used to a certain level of dominance or, you know, scoring chances being farly tilted in the Jets' favor that maybe haven't been in. But, I mean, just when you take away the numbers, which we'll get to in a minute, what have you seen from Nikolaj Ehlers since coming back from his injury? There's been plenty of speculation that, you know, the surgery that he had is one that does take a long time to get forth. I mean, is there anything that sticks out about his game right now that maybe is missing from what we've seen in previous years when he was consistently the most productive player wearing a Jet jersey?
Yeah, I mean, he still is being tremendously productive on a points per minute sort of basis. So I guess I go a few ways with that. Now, remember, before he came back, you know, we were talking, and, you know, I have done this a couple of times. Hey, look at all these guys who've come back from the surgery. They've struggled. Let's be patient. Let's be patient. Let's be patient. I've said that on this show. I've written it at The Athletic. Let's be patient. It may be a while before he's peak Ehlers. Then he rattles off 14 points in 10 games when he comes back from that injury. And so you're wondering, like, whoa, did I overstate that need for patience in that regard? And I'm not sure. I honestly don't know. I go back and forth on that. Do I think visually that there has been some pop that get you out of your seat feeling when he has the puck? Has a little bit of that gone away? Honestly, in my mind, yes. Yes, I think that there's been some explosiveness missing. He's still a plus skater, but has he been just like terrifyingly fast or what have you? I don't necessarily think so. But at the same time, against San Jose, I don't know if you felt it, but I thought that when he was winding up in the defensive zone and he was generating all those entries I was talking about, the fans had a miniature version of that, like, hush, that something might happen vibe again with the puck on his stick. I think that has been missing a little bit, but it was nice to see a turn in that direction. But mostly my takeaway is this. There's been some offensive production, especially when he first came back, but I think it really stands out when he's making, you know, questionable passes on 2-on-1s. He has a net drive where he puts the puck through his own feet and he doesn't get that puck on net. If you have a highlight reel or a low light reel of plays in which Winnipeg makes way too many passes and doesn't shoot, even if he's not the leader of it, he's been in those scenes quite often. And as a zone entry guy, he often has the puck on his stick as the first jet across that blue line. So he's making the first decision, really, with the puck across that blue line. And so he contributes to that overpassing. And I think that when all of the goals are going in, not only do fans feel better, he feels better. There's more confidence in his own shooting and his own playmaking. A lot of that gets dialed in. And then the memories that fans have because he's finishing at a normal rate and the goals are working out on at a normal rate feel a lot better. I think that there's just been some questionable plays that deserve to be addressed and deserve to have coaching impact them, sort of compound, you know, the number slump as well.
No, I listen, and I echo those minutes. I mean, I was in the crowd on Monday, and, you know, it was a very tight game, albeit not necessarily played that tight. I mean, the Jets had more chances, more shots, more everything. But there did seem to be a little bit more of that burst from Nikolaj Ehlers, and I'm not sure whether that was more, you know, he was able to do more because of the competition they were playing against, but it was a good sight to see. What do the numbers say this year? You kind of mentioned a couple of those right now, but I mean, what stands out when you dig into the numbers this year, and how different are the results with Ehlers on the ice this year as opposed to the ones that had him at the top of the team for the last number of years?
Yeah, great question. And if you forget his past, forget anything else, and just focus in on this season, does Winnipeg get a freakish amount of chances with him on the ice, or is his impact as isolated by RAPM, regularized adjusted plus minus, rate adjusted plus, oh my goodness, RAPM metrics? When you look at his impact on the ice, Winnipeg still creates a ton of chances with Ehlers on the ice and a ton of chances in good areas of the ice. The Winnipeg Jets still give up a lot of chances with Ehlers on the ice, but just as throughout his career, the amount that they create is more than what they give up. So if you're looking for a guy to help you win, yes, he's offense first. No, he's not a defensive stalwart, but consistently, you look at scoring chances created by the Jets with him on the ice, and you look at his impact isolated by folks like Evolving Hockey or Micah McCurdy at Hockey Viz, then yes, he's still creating a disproportionately high number of chances from great areas. The only slight change is in terms of expected goals, he's historically had an almost incredible, well, approaching 3 standard deviations above the mean impact on expected goals for the Winnipeg Jets, and that's looking more like 2 now, which is still a lot. It's like the difference between a whole lot and a lot, and that's the only substantial difference, is that Winnipeg has created slightly less, but it's still a lot, and it's still more than what the Jets give up. So it's not the sort of situation that you'd look at with a tremendous amount of concern. Can he be doing more? Yes, because we've seen it in his career, and we've seen these plays where he sort of overpasses, the confidence isn't there. But there's no argument that he hasn't been helping or that he hasn't been creating a lot for the Jets, not based on the metrics this season.
One of the things that I've always found strange, and I'm not sure, we'd have to go back, and you'd be a perfect guy to ask this. I mean, when was Ehlers the most productive? Who he was playing with? How was he being used? Because we can sit here, and it's fun to do a deep dive and talk about one player that's been so important to this Winnipeg Jets team for a number of years, but it is a team game. It is done not individually, but with line mates. And I'll be honest, it's always been strange to me how we've seen so much volatility with Nikolaj Ehlers finding a centerman, a line to consistently be a part and just run with. I mean, what do you make of that? And in your opinion, where's the best fit for Nikolaj Ehlers in the top 6 of the Winnipeg Jets?
Yeah, great question. I think there's a lot of feelings, again, on the players' and coaches' parts that go into this. And just as a random aside, like for years and years and years, after he was elite and he was actually kind of below average, you do a player poll of the NHLPA and say, who's the goalie that you want on the ice? They would say Carey Price. Years and years. And the reason is because it feels like you can trust him. There is that sensibility that it feels good. And anybody who's played hockey knows the difference between a goalie that you feel like you can trust and one that you don't, right? So those decisions make their way into the rest of hockey as well. And I would think of the 2018-2019 Winnipeg Jets, where Nikolaj Ehlers played a substantial amount of time with Mark Scheifele and Blake Wheeler, taking some of those minutes from Kyle Connor, who had traditionally played in that spot. And it was the single most productive version of the Scheifele-Wheeler line that they had seen in those years. It was even more productive than the Connor version by goals, by metrics, by how well Winnipeg did when they were on the ice. And yet it was by playoff time, Connor Scheifele-Wheeler again. And you saw that sort of thing. Why does Ehlers why are the Jets quick to move him out of those situations? And I think part of it, this is just, again, my interpretation. I haven't asked this question. I think part of it is that players know what to expect from a Kyle Connor. I think Nikolaj Ehlers is a chaotic player. I think that there are situations where when he makes a pass that somebody's not expecting, or shoots when they're not expecting it, or holds onto the puck, curls around the net, and you're not sure where to go. Like, I think that even if they could rationally say, hey, we actually get way more goals when this guy's playing, there's probably enough moments of frustration when he's on the ice to be like, hey, I got lost in my route because Nikolaj Ehlers played Jazz for a little bit. And that's my interpretation. Again, nobody's told me that. It's just what I see. And I think when you talk about, the fit and all those sorts of things, I think some of that plays a role in coaching decisions and all of that. In terms of an ideal fit right now, I'll go back to what I wrote when Nino Niederreiter was acquired, and I did a video dive on him, is that Niederreiter is such a sneaky good player in terms of attacking lanes in the middle of the ice. He's such an effective player in terms of winning battles in the corners and in front of the net that lead to chances for himself and for his teammates. Scheifele is Winnipeg's best passer from low to high, from outside in, all of those sorts of things. Ehlers is pretty good too. Scheifele is a freak. He's really quite brilliant at it. And neither of Scheifele or Niederreiter has Nick Ehlers' effectiveness when it comes to zone entries and skating that puck up ice. I argued for that when Niederreiter was acquired. Looks like they practiced that way recently as well. So there's a chance we see that as well. It's something that I'd be looking forward to see if I were the Winnipeg Jets as well.